They wanted it back.
Oh, we got Richard on there. Is that right? Okay. So we have a full house. I will go ahead and call us to order. It is 6 o'clock up. December 12th. And if you would all join me for, actually, let's do roll call first. Formalities since we're all here, but Bill? Here. Richard?
He's on.
Crystal?
Here.
Christie? Here. Heidi?
Here.
Ricardo? Here. Chair's here. Richard, do you want to chime in and say you're here? See, trying to unmute.
How about this? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
All right, we have a full quorum. If you join me in flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, thank you to everybody for joining us. Staff, welcome for joining us. No colds are going around and sickness is going around, so good to see everybody here who is healthy still yet. We'll start off with our work session. So with that, we'll probably deal with the second reading policies and adoptions. I didn't know if we had stuff to add to that or if it's just clarifying language between us here.
Yeah, it's clarifying. I just added something on the document. With the digital. But that was.
So this was dealing with the one that was the describer, using the describer words in there.
Wait, I was sorry, no, not
No,
medications, no,
I didn't see that one on there.
no,
The medication?
No, the describer one, the students with disabilities.
that was the IEP stuff.
Yeah, I didn't see an IEP one come across.
Okay,
our desk.
okay, my mistake.
Uh-uh.
Did that one before.
Mm-mm.
There was
changes.
We did first reading, but we haven't done the second.
Okay, thank you. I'll make a motion that we approve for second reading and adoption, JHCD, JHCDA, and JHCD, JHCDA/A.
I'll second.
A motion second, is there discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Richard and Alton by roll call. Bill? Aye. Richard?
Aye.
Crystal?
I,
Christie?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
Ricardo? Aye. And chair votes for. So we have those for second reading and adoption. Moving on to 2B. This would be for first reading and adoption. We were chatting just a little bit before, just a point of order. First reading is generally not a place where we wordsmith. It's just literally an acceptance of the language. That does not mean we're accepting it as policy.
right,
But then we're tasked with, if we have questions, clarifications, wordsmithing to do, we should probably send that back to Diane and Ginger in order to come to bring us back a copy that would be suitable. So I just kind of wanted to make that clarification on a first reading.
can I ask a question about it? So on the ones that are marked optional, GCAA, GCQB, IFE, are those policies that we already have?
If the update that I provided, the Google document,
Uh-huh,
where it says my summary and statements, it identifies whether we currently have a policy or not. So, for example, IGAC, we do not have a policy, so we would not need to adopt these revisions.
And instructional assistants, we also do not have that policy, so we don't need to revise it. The standards for competent and ethical performance, we do not have that either, so GCAA, GBA, IGAC, and EHAR are all policies that we do not have. So therefore, we don't need to adopt any revisions.
So I didn't know if you wanted to take these one by one, or if you have highlights you wanted to go through first. And kind of give some background on some of these.
Yes, basically the 1 and 2, which is the EH, and like I said, EHAR we don't have, so we don't have that. And public records 11 and 12 are connected to the changes that were done. Updated records policy and updated public records policy. Because of a statute that was revised and there's new terminology and new practices. So, and it's all about records. So that's why they're connected. So based on the recommendation for KBA and KBAR, which we do have, it's recommended that you adopt the revisions as they're written. So for EH,
Okay,
it's recommended that you rescind the old policy because the old policy states that we will cover EHAR and we never have it. So OSBA recommends that you rescind the current policy and then adopt the revised one in its place.
Maybe it's just me, but I'm really confused because we have the packet. And some of these policies are ones you're saying that we don't even need to look at because we don't have them, like the records of data management. And then, but then looking at your list, which is, you know, this packet is not correlated to respond with that. And then there's the list on our agenda. So did we just talk about each policy? Am I the only one a little lost here or?
well, I
Yes,
didn't,
am.
I didn't see this Google link before,
Okay.
so.
Summary page.
Yeah, I didn't see this one before, so I'm going through it, so,
Okay.
yeah, if we just start,
We can do it any way that helps you.
So, but number 1 and number 2, we don't currently have them, is what you're saying,
We have one, but not two.
right?
But
So
one
what
says
we-
we have two.
This is the proposed,
Yeah, if it says.
New.
Yeah.
does that make sense, Heidi? What you have in your hand
Right.
is the proposed new one, it's not replacing anything.
Okay, so you're proposing we adopt this, if we do not have it.
We currently have an EH, but it is inaccurate and it is very outdated.
Okay,
So because it has some language that isn't the same, the recommendation is that you rescind the existing EH and replace it with the new EH.
Okay.
Adopt it today.
all right, I understand.
That also includes an AR,
Okay,
No,
number 2.
no, there's no AR. We don't have an AR.
but there is an AR.
But
There is an
It-
AR.
that is the
but that's not-
proposed.
But that's not recommended.
so you're
Okay,
not
so you
recommending
don't
AR.
recommend doing that.
can I ask why we're not recommending an
I
A?
consulted with the people who do our records and they said it's not necessary because that's something to do.
Okay.
Who maintains our record?
Linda works with people in the office and the secretary and our records clerk. There are very strict rules about school records and how they must be maintained. And for how long they must be kept and stored. And
And those rules exist, not in AR right now.
they exist outside the AR and everyone must follow.
Okay.
So the AR doesn't really help us.
Okay. I do have a question on the EH. 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph down, there's a series of brackets. I don't understand this, the second bracket with the second bracket inside the bracket.
Yeah.
Are we proposing to adopt all of that?
No, we would, I haven't changed anything yet because it's the first reading,
Yeah.
but we would not because that would have to pay in 2 employees full time just to perform that level of record keeping. But when it's not necessary. You can do that, but you don't have to.
So this sentence is proposed as, keep the first bracket, the second one starting by scanning, blah, 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 would not be. Okay.
I do have a question about that then, and you can answer this later after we do first adoption, but. So if an employee leaves our district, how are their email chains saved?
They're archived.
And we can access those?
If
If
there's
needed.
subpoena, yeah.
Okay, so then the AR is not recommended. And then you said the KBs, number 11 and 12, link directly to the EHs, right? So,
Are we going down the line or no?
It would be easier to stay in order, the way the documents are placed in the agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Diane.
What's the next one then? The HABB, it's the 2 IIABB -AR. Okay.
I guess 1 to 3 are missing, the optional, recommended, highly recommended. That's why I was not understanding temporarily, so it's 3. Can we add on the agenda? 1, 2, and 3 don't have the parentheses at the end that all the rest of them do, and not parentheses, sorry,
Yeah,
the recommendation at the end, and we have the recommendation, so
Right,
1 is recommended, 2 is not recommended, 3 is,
recommended,
and then the rest of them have labels,
right.
so. Now we can see that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I had some questions on this one. So on the first paragraph, what we're inserting, the instructor is responsible for following copyright laws for movies and services. It says, it may not utilize private streaming service accounts. Is that redundant? Did you want to take out the first streaming, or am I? Will not utilize private streaming service accounts.
It says it twice.
Well, it seems
Yeah.
redundant to me, but
Take a look.
I get what they're trying to say, but it
think
may
all you
not
wanna say is-
utilize private streaming service accounts if their use is prohibited for public or school showing.
I think all you need to say is you may not utilize private streaming service accounts.
Or featuring private.
They have to, yeah, the intent of that statement is to.
Are we talking like YouTube?
Or if your private streaming service, you use like Disney Plus, Netflix. People, and each one of those companies has a very strict rule about using your private streaming service to show something publicly.
Right.
And have actually gone after people and given them a nice bill for $10,000. For using it in the public setting. And school districts that have not told their staff not to do that, have been given bills as well. Because it's assumed that you should have known to tell them. There are pieces, like if you're on your private Netflix, and there is a segment for educational purposes, then you're following the copyright law and the privacy agreement because you're using it for education purposes, and that would be allowed. But showing a movie on Netflix is not allowed. So that's why the guidance is about following the privacy rules of the streaming service. PBS streaming service is all education. And there are very few things that they say that you can't show. So, you know, it's really incumbent on the teacher to make sure that they're following their streaming service rules if they're going to be using it at school.
That's a good addition. I had a question on, going down to the, I don't know, fifth paragraph after the 1 through 6 enumerated bullets, anyway. Motion pictures with an R rating. It looks like for PG and PG-13 ratings, they require prior parent consent, but not for an R movie.
Yes. Yes,
It doesn't, I've read this a couple times and I don't see it in here.
So 2 more paragraphs down.
No,
That's for G.
Up one.
It says,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Simply because ours aren't allowed at all.
but they are,
Saying-
but they do show
That's good.
it. It happens.
And
Probably why we need a policy.
preview of film when practically possible, and that parent must give prior consent. Yeah, I think it's the paragraph before.
I think so too, but
That's how I read it, but
It read it to me like if they preview the film, then they can give the prior consent or something. I don't know. I just
Yeah.
thought it should be a little clearer that, you know, like it is in the, for the PG and PG-13.
so are you
Yeah.
saying in the second paragraph down where it says PG or PG-13 rating that we need to add R there?
Yeah, I would just add R there. Yeah,
So PG comma, PG-13 comma, R
Yeah.
rating?
yeah.
Yeah, I could do that. It just makes it a little more clear.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody? Yeah, Ricardo says yeah. Chrissy?
yeah, I don't see
So the
that.
second paragraph, got it, I see where it is, okay.
So add an R there. So R rating.
You do get it in the motion pictures with an R rating shall not, as a general rule, be shown in district classrooms. However, under special circumstances, 4 weeks prior notice with parents. Like it specifically calls it out there.
Does it say 4 weeks on your copy?
Well, mine just says, mine just talks about teachers, but not about parents.
Yeah, it just says the principal will be given notice.
I just wonder if pulling it down into that might be clearer than to, because that makes it seem like it's a general and then there's a separate rule.
Yeah, if you go down to page, the first page is the AR details. And then down below, the second page is the form that the administrator has to review prior to approving the film. And the third is the one that the parent has to sign,
Yeah, but I mean,
where it has that as well.
yeah, but those are just forms. I'm talking about the policy wording itself.
How are we reading the paragraph that starts, a parent may have the opportunity to preview a film when practically possible, and that parent must give prior consent before his or her student may view a film rated.
PG-13 or R.
Well, I read that as if the parent who previews the film then must give prior consent, not just all parents being notified and asking, being required to give consent.
I don't think it's too much to ask to have R put up with the other two, because it specifically calls out prior parental consent. And I don't see that clear anywhere else, really,
I
Why don't
see,
you just put other than G?
right?
So the first paragraph says G rating, and then the second paragraph could just say, anything other than G requires prior parental consent.
Well, yeah, or just
Yeah.
leave it the way it is and add the art, because then it's
Yeah.
clear, every single rating is shown and. Except for,
Diane has added R to the second paragraph.
All right. So GCAA,
We're not going to do,
we're not gonna do this one.
because we don't have that.
Okay.
policy.
And then,
ECQB is next.
sorry, sister. And this one's like modified assignment. So if they can do some form of work, then we can bring them back. Is that how I read that?
Yes, it reads the district staff are encouraged to participate in research for the development and improvement of education. Staff
Wait.
proposed to
Am I the
engage
wrong one?
Can I
CQB.
interrupt for a second when you're done there, Ginger?
Well, why don't you go ahead now?
Okay, so GCAA, I'm really having a hard time hearing you. Can you tell me, did you decide that you want to pull that tonight?
We're not discussing that. We don't have that policy. So we don't need to revise it or adopt it.
Thank you.
So are we doing number 5 or number 6?
I thought we were on number 5, GCBDB.
Thank you.
GCBQ, is it not on here?
Oh, that one's the next
Oh, I
one.
see. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Wrong.
So this one's an early return to work.
Okay, we're on number 5, early return to work. And that is on my form and it says. I have it right here. Accept the change, it's changed the gender-based language of he, she to the word there. And you have the option of will or may. And we've selected may. And it asks you, the reason for it is it's aligned with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission guidance. And it allows you to help someone who is ready to return to work from an injury to be able to do so and provides guidance. It also asks that you look at your collective bargaining agreement to make sure there's no conflict and there's no conflict.
so in my copy, May is crossed out. But we're suggesting May.
We're suggesting.
Okay.
Our current policy says will.
What policy says will?
Our current policy,
Yes. I always favor the May side.
Did you have a question on that? If I could. If, so if we replace will with may, and the district chooses not to provide temporary unpaid leave as an accommodation, what would be the alternative?
Well, we would want them to come back to work if possible. We
Okay.
want to, our goal is to bring them back to work rather than having them out, continue to be out on leave.
Yep, understood, but if their recovery is ongoing, sick leave is exhausted, no other assignment is possible, district chooses not to provide unpaid leave as an accommodation, the employee chooses not to return to work, is the employee terminated at that point, or what's, I'm just curious.
That may be a scenario, that may be a scenario. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have had a situation like this prior in our district, and it helps if the district has alternatives.
And we are not shy on the number of alternatives that we have at this particular time. So having the flexible language is actually a benefit, not only to the employee that needs to find something that they can do, but to the employer that needs to be able to fill jobs that are difficult to fill. So this gives us more options.
Yeah, understood. It just seems like this would apply if no other assignment were possible, which suggests to me that we've sort of exhausted the available alternatives at that point. But I may be reading that wrong.
I agree with Richard. Because if you read the whole entire paragraph, it seems like you already went that route with everything else. And then this is like a last alternative or a last effort where the district will provide temporary unpaid leave as an accommodation. I want to make sure that May isn't going to tie us up with holding a position for an extended period of time when they've reached their OFLA and FMLA documentation.
But will definitely make us, put us in that position.
Okay.
It will be more binding.
And so all of those determinations go through the FMLA procedures to determine.
All right. I'm okay with Maven. I just want to make sure we're not binding ourselves to hold a position once the FMLA and OFMLA applies.
There's three things coming up. There's also the new paid leave. That's rolling into.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're at the research.
So this is listed as optional, but you're recommending.
We have it in policy, so I'm recommending the revised version. And I wanted to read it out loud intentionally. Staff will propose to engage in research, e.g. study towards advanced work for the use in classroom instruction, using district resources or students, will submit a proposal to the superintendent for prior approval prior to commencing such research. If approved and the study results in material or practices which may be useful to other district staff, such will be reviewed by administration and may be made available for distribution throughout the district as determined by administration. For the protection of all concerned, privacy rights of the students or other individuals involved in such research must be protected. So part of it is our duty to protect the students who would be research subjects if we are not informed and engaged and overseeing the project or part of it. Then we may be at risk of having students engage in research without full consent. I'm sure there's some sort of IRB process involved, but we should be part of that. I think the universities would be part of that as well. And it also, since the research is being done using resources here, we should have a right to review and decide whether or not the findings from the research are of value to the district to use in other locations besides where the location the research was that occurred. So if it worked great in the third grade, then we should be able to see if we can use it in the fourth and fifth as well. And that kind of thing.
So where is parental notification?
Oh, that would have to be part of that. The process of having students and where they couldn't do the research if they didn't have parent permission.
Are you asking if language should be added?
Parental notification should be added somewhere in this document.
What if that would fall under an AR rather than a I'm appreciating your point, I'm just not sure where to put it. But we can make sure that that's.
Yeah, there needs to be parental approving, that sort of
Mhm.
thing.
I would feel better too if in that AR there was language towards the superintendent ensuring that the IRB process has been complied with.
Mhm.
Um, And I also, I mean, I don't know where the research money is coming from, but in general, the data doesn't belong to anybody to give it out, so it's depending on who pays for it,
Mhm.
they own the data, and
Right.
so you may not be able to share that with the district before it goes through whatever hoops, and so there could be some, I don't know. There could be in the intent, by the nature of the grant, inability to comply with this,
Right,
so
yeah.
I don't know how to resolve that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because it's really
Maybe
not
it's
the
the
staff
fine.
doesn't own the data, whoever pays for it.
Yeah, I don't know if we're asking for the data or for the findings, or for the results.
Well, same,
If approved, the study results and material or practices which may be useful to other district staff. So not the data itself, but.
yeah, but if one does research for an organization that's not a federal funds, then that organization can make their own rules about what happens to those results, so.
True.
I mean, that might be on your checklist of
Mhm.
approval or not approval,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it would be on the checklist according to this, yeah.
right.
Okay. That's a good one for number two. Yeah, okay. Anything else?
So we're on number 7, are you recommending?
The number 6,
Oh.
Yeah.
No, I thought we were done with 6.
well,
I think she has different ones.
Oh, the IFE?
IFE.
Are we on?
we're going to move to IFE,
Oh.
I just want to make sure we're
Oh,
done. Yeah. Okay.
I was done clearly.
Okay. Let's see. Yes, this IFE is kind of along the skill, when we did the revisions of the graduation requirements. And we removed the essential skills. This asked to do the same thing for curriculum guides and course outlines. So it aligns that. It focuses on the change of essential skills status, which are no longer required, and adds in the place of that academic content standards to be part of curriculum guides and course outlines, which I think is a good move. So it's recommended. Okay.
I'm good.
I was reading and apparently my brain can only do one thing at a time today. Did you say we have this IFE right now?
Yes. And as a item of note, revisions that they suggest also align to our goals. We're ready for rigor and focusing on academic. Aligns to the strategic plan.
You good? Yeah. I don't know why. Yeah, to me.
Expanded, we have an expanded options program.
Yeah, well, it's a state program called Expanded Options. And, yes, I can't think, Deanne, expanded options that you're currently using, there's a lot possible. It's special funds for when kids want to take a class from OIT. We can use yeah, we can use those funds to pay for that opportunity because the student has achieved everything that's possible at school and needs something beyond what's here. So we use that money for that. Other CTE, there are some CTE courses that can be taken, especially because of expanded options programs. Do you have anything else that you've got going for your application using expanded options? Mostly those, the GED option. GED option is another one. And this builds into that to make sure they highlighted this change, bring it to everyone's attention. This includes students who have dropped out and want to come back to school, provide funding for anything that they need that's special in order to help them catch up and graduate. To bring them back. So that's the purpose of the change in the language to include a dropout returning to school. And I believe that was the original intent of Senate Bill 100 when they passed it the first time.
So it's, the student has to be over 16 and in 11th or 12th grade. What if they fall outside of? I mean, what's the point of the 16 or 11th or 12th? What if you have a freshman who needs extra stuff?
Provided anyway. I mean,
Yeah, I guess I don't understand why are we listing that as a qualifier?
Because we allow, we do all grades,
Yeah,
whatever they need, if it's what they were pathway.
right. I just wonder if, like, I mean, if I read this, I'd be like, oh.
And then we have sophomores that are working on their GED. If they're 16.
Yeah,
You have to be 16 for a GED though.
okay. But this, like you said, we use other programs or courses or whatever opportunities for kids that don't just, it's not just only GED, right? So, I mean, I
I'm trying
wouldn't
to
stop
think that
because.
this might have been connected to a specific Senate bill, you know, and some funding streams that were connected to that. You're exactly right. We support other kids through other
Right.
funding streams
Right.
to access.
What if we put typically a student? I just don't want it like, I mean, this isn't gonna stop me personally from advocating for a child. However, some people are gonna be like,
Well, let's put it this way, we can do expanded options that way, for kids who don't fall under these categories, using general funds or other, like Measure 90.
right,
But if we're going to use this specific set of funds, we have to follow these rules, or we're violating the grant guidelines. So that's what they're telling us is what the grant guidelines are for this,
yeah,
and how we are to use the fund. And it's just a narrow, one of many funding streams that feed into the high school. And which is why high school is so much fun. You have to keep track of all of this paperwork for all these different programs.
It's a good thing. It's another way to access resources to you guys.
Yep.
yeah. I just wish it said like the first sentence that we were committed to providing educational options. Period. One of those is, you know, like, so that it's not just, this is the only way to get those options, because we don't address it anywhere else, right? Like, we don't talk about using general funds to offer some of these similar things to people outside of these categories. We only,
We just do it.
right, but nobody knows.
But with high school success grant and student investment account, increasingly, we actually, those like the high school success, they're kind of exactly, you know, designed to support some of these types of
Right.
things. So we are talking more about how that is being used to support
Okay.
our CPE programs and access to college credit courses outside the stream. Probably even more than this.
Willamette Career Academy.
Mhm. Mhm.
I do appreciate down here the under student notification where that language was changed. That was a very, to me, thoughtful change in language that I think is impactful. So I don't know who did that, but.
Any more questions before we move on?
Are we on a compulsory attendance daily? So the added language, is that for the Senate Bill 817? Just curious, was the prior policy, did it have the parent or legal guardian would be liable for a Class C violation? It did. So now there's no teeth to this language. It doesn't give any, there's no enforcement ability or accountability, right?
What they found was that the people who were receiving the fines and the penalties are the people who couldn't afford to pay them. So it ended up having a detrimental effect. And did not help. So they said, no, this is not working. We need to stop doing this and let's do something else instead. But yes, that,
So these, you know, parent legal whoever are required to have the child attend and maintain child in regular attendance, and that's it. There's no nothing else of it.
except try to reinforce with having every staff member reinforce, and they do, that it's a common use phrase now, every day matters. Every day that a child's in school, they make a little bit of progress. Cumulatively, over many days, they make significant progress. So every day matters.
I realize we don't have, you know, truancy officials anymore, but, you know, it says that attendance supervisors, I mean, what do you do when you have a child who's not showing up for school? I'm just curious.
Well, we do have a letter process, and we send letters home. And we request it and require a meeting with the principals. And then the parent visits,
You do home visits.
Meeting with the parents.
yeah, lots of meetings with parents, trying to come up with a solution. We have attendance contracts available.
And has an attendance team that meets regularly, and they look at kids who are struggling with that, and try to look at individual kids and what might best, you know, support individual kids based on on their case, is what their team decides.
And then if there's attendances because of medical reasons, they fill out the chronic illness form and put that on.
Any other questions, comments?
And of course, JEAR is the process that we use, and it's the same term. So then the next is, and the last two are the public records request, and then the AR that goes with that, which we have.
Can I ask you a quick question on the AAR?
Mhm.
So 8 unexcused 1/2 day absences is what they're allowed to miss? Was that not our stuff?
I have to go look at our calculations for our process. But it's right around 8 to 10.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, my kids miss 8 at least per year.
Well, and this year's hard because kids are missing.
Yeah,
so
that's what
much
I'm
because
saying,
of
like-
illness, So I think like this year's a little different too, but I think that had been close to what we had in the past.
And that's like that chronic illness form, that kind of stops the process.
Mhm.
When you're aware of it, why do it, then that's it. Because of the illnesses.
Well, isn't illness an excuse?
It doesn't matter if it's excused or unexcused.
I'm just reading what it says on the policy, is that it's 8 unexcused 1/2 day absences. So I guess I don't know what that means. I assumed that was not. Nobody notifies the school that the child's gone. That's what I'm assuming that means, but,
Right.
okay,
Or they come to school and don't go to class.
that,
Mhm.
And this is within a 4-week period, any 4-week,
okay.
not for the whole year, that's within a 4-week.
Oh,
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
and a 4-week period.
Mhm.
Okay.
but I mean, if they're like. You're telling me though, it doesn't matter if it's excused or not, because I mean, we took one of our kids out of school for 2 weeks.
Did you do a prearranged absence?
I don't know, it's from Spain. I can't recall, it was 2 years ago, a year ago. But I assume so. So you're saying that that's a component of it? I just want to make sure that before we start penalizing parents, that we have clear documentation they can see.
The attendance is what something we are always evaluating and going through that process. And now they have to change again.
I know we're not wordsmithing here, but that's a terrible, like, it's a
Yeah, I know,
double
that's what I'm
negative, it's
saying.
making me, it's hurting my head. Right? I mean, like,
Hurting our
it'd just
head
be a
because we
little more
actually
clear.
changed the definition of attendance.
I know.
every year for the past 3 or 4 years. We're just remembering how to do it.
Yeah. Not including more than. I don't know, it's hard to understand, it would be. It could be.
So what I'm hearing is if you have language you wanna send me.
I'm
Yeah.
marking it.
We can at least reconcile.
I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, okay,
Cause this is just. reading, but
yeah, no, it's just hard to understand, so it would be good to have something different. I'll make a note. See if I read
Can you make that a little clearer, please? Cause I'm like, wait, what?
Okay.
So the last two are the KBA and KBA is the R is dealing with public record. And And, we need to update these to reflect current terminology and practices with respect to public records request. And the people that deal with that the most are myself and Linda. And I had her review these closely, and she said they're both good, which is often is recommended. So it's my recommendation.
Clarifying questions or comments? With that, I would accept the motion that we accept these as first reading.
I'll move that we accept the proposed policy for first reading. With the recommended, with the recommendations from staff. And as suggested by the board also.
I'll second that.
Have a motion second, is there any discussion?
Glenn, this is Rich, just a, maybe just a
Sure, go ahead, Richard.
point of order question here on the, I guess I'm a little hung up on the language on the agenda where it says first reading and adoption. I mean, my understanding is that we're, moving these on to second reading. So I'm just, I guess, a little confused about the adoption word in the agenda.
Yeah, so her motion did not mention adoption, her motion specifically just said first reading, so. But thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, you always have the option of doing a first read and adoption on simple changes, but I thought you might want to take some time with these. Because of the topic.
Great, thank you.
So just to restate, the motion was for first reading, acceptance of first reading on these. Any other discussion? And then we'll move to a vote. Bill?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Bill?
I,
Christie?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
Ricardo?
Aye.
Chair votes for. So we will revisit those in a month or so. We have some to hold for February. Is that list still accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a ELO migrant family night coming up on January 19th as part of the board's strategy to implement strategic planning. We wanted to, a component of that is having family engagement. And so this is an opportunity for, I'd like to see 3 of us be able to engage on that night. And so I would be looking for some volunteers, or I'll be calling you if I don't get any volunteers.
Glenn, I'm happy to participate.
Sorry, what was that?
I'm happy to participate on the 19th if,
Okay. You go too? Okay, so Christine,
Yeah.
okay. So can you, Ginger, fill them in on details on that,
Yes,
those 3?
yep.
Thank you
I'll
guys
send you
for-
a separate email. Tomorrow.
And thanks for volunteering for that, so. And probably we'll have you report out back to the, back to the board after that happens, so. I had it brought to our attention, this is probably the last item for a work session, it looks like. There was an inquiry about fee structure and what that means to our families in the district. And so I wanted to back up one point and say, okay, is this something that the board really wants to look at? Because it's gonna, if we take a hard look at it and meld it into a budgetary process, it's gonna mean some time for staff. So I kind of wanted to, a feeling from you guys, whether it's important enough to move forward in actually looking, doing sort of a study to find out what that would look like. Because if we take money out of our budget to offset fees, it's gonna have to come from someplace. And And so I wanted to put it out to you guys to see if there was really an appetite to, to look further at that.
So I'll just speak up and say I was one of the people who brought it to Glenn's attention, because other districts around have, well, one of them is Staten, I believe, have started taking fees from their budget, because we've done all this equity work regarding, if they participate in an extracurricular activity or sports activity of some sort, they have the higher percentage of graduating. So I was asking around, and many of the parents have multiple children, and so their children have to choose to pick one sport. They can't do 3 sports, or they have to take turns amongst their kids. Another thing that I was told, that was brought to my attention, was that some of the children are working multiple jobs to be able to pay for their own sports because their parents can't afford it. Some parents will not come in and ask for assistance out of a couple different things. One, they don't want tracking. Second of all, it's kind of a pride thing because information is leaked and passed around, so they don't want there to be record of their children needing assistance. So these are all different topics that have been on my mind for like the last 2 months, and it's been becoming clear that it is a situation behind the scenes that's not being addressed. And so I would like the school board to take a stand on it and say, yes, we'll make this a budgetary item. We've talked about it multiple times, even from an equity-based lens, it gives all children equal playing field. So that's my soapbox.
Any other comments?
Yeah, this is Richard. I guess I would be interested in, understanding more about what sort of other area schools and districts are doing in this regard, like Canby and Wilsonville and Woodburn and others, just to sort of calibrate with what we might want to consider.
I think my good friend who's a Canby parent says that, because she has 2 children at the high school who are both athletes, one's a senior. It's like $1,200 a term per sport. With 2 at 600. So, yeah, yeah. Highest sport.
And for CT, it can be, and I believe Oregon City, from my colleagues at work, they not only charge you the fee for CTE stuff, but they also have an office fee for just handling the fee of $30. So for example, it's $25 to participate in FBLA. At Canby, it's $55, because you gotta pay them the $30 for handling the fee.
I was thinking like for sports, for example, there's some districts that, cap the fees to play sports if you play multiple sports, so you don't have to pay 3 times the fee, you only have to pay something less.
Oregon City also requires each athlete to raise about $200-ish for their sports. They have to go on the public and do something. And some parents will just pay that out of their own pocket. Other kids have to go out and try and raise the money. And that covers,
Yeah,
you go to
yeah.
businesses.
Like,
Yes, I was sitting literally on South Beach, Miami 2 days ago, and a kid in his high school basketball jersey hit me for $20 to cover his feet.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it across country from
But I'm just
different.
saying that happens here.
Yeah.
And it covers the stipend. That's what Oregon City parents are told, that the team has to raise the money to cover the stipend for the coach.
For the extra coaches.
Yeah.
Oh, for the extra coaches. Yeah.
Or coach.
There's a head
Different-
coach
different
that
schools.
was paid, and then all the extra coaches. We paid for stuff.
So I guess my take on it would be, sports and activity fees are one thing. What about even just enrollment and all of those other fees every year? I get those and I'm like, well, aren't we going to public school here? And that varies across the country as well. Yep. And I would like to understand, I've had conversations over the years of like, hey, why are you saying I have to pay to enroll my child every year? Like, what's going on with that? And so I would like to see information on why and how are people getting support if they need that, for enrollment fees, and any other curricular fees. You know, it's nice to know what districts around us are doing, but I think we also need to know what are our values and what will our budget allow, because
We do. have
I
that,
value
yeah.
students doing many things, and not being restrained by whatever their personal finances are. So, it would be nice to know if we have flexibility and, or we can partner with boosters or something like that. To be able to provide that in a different way.
Well, we certainly want to remove any barriers. that
Yeah.
Kids and families have. to
Yeah.
The things that they want for them.
Can I
Go
just
ahead.
add a little bit about what we do, or? You're right, Crystal, they don't really come and help us, because they don't want to. And, for example, the sports fee, they have to pay before the first competition. A lot of times they go to their coaches, where they feel a lot more comfortable, or they'll talk to Anita. And then with me, a lot of times it's just good faith. You have $1, you have $2, whatever to put it on the table, and then we will work with you, whether it's payments or I can find funds to finish the payment, whatever it is, because I don't want to turn them over. And same with the college credit, we do have funds for college credit that I could use to help pay with the college credit.
Yeah, I mean, it is a hidden problem, especially in our area and our poverty level too. And you know, it's humbling to have to ask for help. I've received many of phone calls that I've written checks for behind the scenes because I can feel their pain. And so if that's something that as a board, we can make an impact on, especially when it correlates directly with graduation, I don't understand why, you know, we shouldn't investigate. Granted, I still believe we should do not just our big schools that are wealthy, but also some of our little ones that are nearby. Like, you know, extensively.
And I would call to your point, that's always been what I've been told here is that kids are not turned away
Yeah.
regardless of the ability to pay. That's always been and I wasn't trying to point to that in having this discussion, but it was to create a larger, you know, see if there's interest in us going further than what we're doing now. So.
Yeah, and I'll reach out to Staten too and find out, because it sounds like they're either using their high school success money or part of the Measure 98 money.
Yeah, it was two of them that I want to say one was Staten. I'll double check that. I want to think.
So I'm sensing enough interest here that I think we probably should at least take
Yeah,
a
like
look.
we're coming around the corner of budget development for next year and having these kind of conversations with you.
Yeah, so is that something you'd want to conference, say 2 or 3 members, between you and a couple of members to actually look at it and see? Would that be the strategy to go forward
Well, yeah,
prior to the development of the
oh,
budget?
yeah,
though?
we've got.
Because
there's a
it's
lot.
gotta be,
Yeah.
it's gotta be done,
Yeah.
you know, before we actually get to the budgeting process.
Yeah, because when I think now about what we're currently using Measure 98 high school success funds for, what are we paying for with those dollars right now? Not much for fees, mostly staff.
And just maybe a wonder if participation, you know, is really a question, how do we maximize opportunity? You know, there may be other things that have costs, resources, you know, connected with them that limit participation as well. Activity buses come to mind right away, you know, what I mean? You can get transportation to and from those things that are after school and things like that, so. Just wondering if there's a larger question to ask and kind of think about.
Yeah, like that.
what the solutions to that.
Yeah, well, that was mainly my idea for the conversation, was to get a sense as to where the board was, but there seems to be some interest, so. You and I can talk.
Yeah, come up with a couple.
And come up with maybe we can do a little bit of conferencing
Yeah.
in January, February, with a couple of members who could provide some input and some ideas, so.
Yeah, and I like that, the way, how can we increase participation? That's the driving question.
Yeah, that would be a great great, I won't say unintended consequences, because I would be strategically, placing that, but it would be really good to be able to increase participation, so.
Not to put you on the spot, Dan, but put you on the spot. Do you know, just curious, what is the sports fee now? I'm just going back. Morning, how much?
It's 125 or.
125, and then if it's free and reduced, it's 50.
Well, then it hasn't changed for
It
years,
has not changed in years.
because that's what it was when my kids were.
Yeah.
Wow, that's,
And we're pretty cheap.
Yeah,
Compared to
it is
other
cheap.
districts, we are pretty cheap.
yeah.
Like you said, we have not increased that at all.
And then there used to be like a family cap. that you
Yes.
had.
We still have that.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
All right, I have 7:06. We are at 2D, which is the end of our work session. So let's go ahead and adjourn here for 10 minutes. And we will pick this back up at 7:16 then.